Assalamu alaikum. So I will be the next speaker. Okay, so let me present myself. I'm Dr. Walid. I work with the German University of Technology in Oman. I'm the director of training and smart solutions. So it's all about smart technology. When we bring technology, we have to build capacity and we have to train people around this technology. So this is the purpose of the center. And also I'm the founder and president of a Future City Council, and I will tell you the reason. So why we call the future? Because we studied a lot of future smart cities initiative, and the idea is we have collected more than 186 definitions of smart cities. So people look at cities from technology perspective, IoT, big data, ICT, and so on. Other people look at cities from green perspective and sustainability perspective. Other people look at cities from social perspective, and others look at cities from political perspective, and so on. So out of this 186 definition, we come up with one definition which turn around smartness, sustainability, innovation, and so on, and we call the future city because we want to solve the future challenges of cities. Why it's like a group or council? Because around the cities, we have studied more than 200 claimed smart cities around the world. And we realized that most of the solution and innovation coming to solve the problem of cities are basically following the agenda of a specific company or the agenda of specific government. So the government has its own agenda to solve the problem of cities. The businesses and companies or industry, they have their own agenda to bring their technology to solve the problem of cities. The academia as well, they have their own agenda. And the people who are living in cities, they want their city to be as they want. So different agendas, and sometimes contradictory agendas between, for example, the agenda of the citizen and the government. So the idea is to come up with a middle player between all of this quadruple helix. I mean the business, academia, government, and citizen, civil society. So this is why we have established this council to connect these quadruple helix entities and to come up with the solutions to the challenge and the problem which satisfying all the agenda. So this council is based on Toronto, Canada, and we connect basically everybody from academia, from businesses, from government, and from the society to come up with affordable solution which satisfies everybody. So today I'm going to talk about smart mobility as one of the pillar of smart cities, because we are involved in basically all the pillars, from smart parking, smart energy, smart water, smart transportation, smart education, smart health. We call the future actually. So by 2050, again, we have more than 9 billion citizens. We will have 50 megacities, which has more than 10 million people. Now we are 31 megacities across the globe. 75% will be living in cities, and now we are 54%. As I mentioned this morning, we'll have 1.2 billion cars on the road, and by 2050, maybe this number will grow to 2 billion cars. So the question, can the world handle these many wheels? So the current mobility and the transport system is not sustainable, is not healthy, is not safe. It's stressful, it's congested, we have delays, we have pollutions. It's not safe at all. This is what the description of our current mobility and transport system. So this is a picture about mobility and transport system nowadays. This is another picture of our current transport and mobility in one city, one mega city in India. So is that the system and mobility that we want in the future? Of course not. So the mobility problem, is universal, is aspiration, is freedom, is autonomy, is accessibility. This is the picture of mobility as we want from a citizen perspective, of course. The mobility is the lifeblood of cities and economies. So if we have a sick, unhealthy mobility system, of course the economy will be sick. Not the full city or the full country will be sit. It will be paralyzed because everything depends on the mobility. Our life, our economy. If there is an accident on the road, we'll be delayed, we'll not do our job. Some other people will be delayed because we don't do our job, and all the whole economy will be affected. So the idea is what we want from our future mobility and transport system. We want it safe, we want it clean, we want it reassuring, we want it comfortable, we want it flexible, we want it affordable, cost-effective, healthy, we want it environmental friendly, we want it door-to-door, we want it connected, and we want it integrated. So this is basically what we want from our future cities and future mobility system in the future. So the idea I'm going to show you in my presentation, a few facets of the future mobility and transportation. Maybe we have seen few of them today in order to come up to this aspiration, to this goal. So what is the phase of future mobility or future city? We have emergence of a new mobility ecosystem. So this is what we want from our future mobility. So the first thing is the emergence of new mobility ecosystem. And this picture shows that it's a long time ago people been thinking about the future of mobility and the future of transportation system. We have this old magazine called Science of Mechanics or Modern Mechanics. Every time they come up with new ideas about mobility, long time ago. So people long time ago have been thinking about what we are thinking about it now. So we have many phases of future mobility. We talk about car sharing, we talk about ride sharing, we talk about P2P car rental, we talk about bike sharing, we talk about smart parking, we talk about telecommunication, real-time traffic system, intelligent transportation system, we talk about personal travel assistance, we talk about connected vehicle, we talk about road user charging, we talk about autonomous vehicle, we talk about real-time travel information. A lot of ideas coming to shape this future mobility and transportation system. And again, many businesses, many governments, they are going on just one direction. But they will come up with a future mobility system which satisfies one agenda or one direction. So the idea is to think about all of this at the same time to satisfy all the parties. So I'm going to show you a few phases of, direction of future mobility and transportation system. So one idea is, again, in order to reduce the energy fuel consumption and in order to reduce the CO2 emission and so on, some companies or innovators, they come up with what we call light material or weight, or what is called also micro-mobility. So the idea is to come up with small mobility systems that can help us to go from A to B without affecting the environment. This mobility system can be, secure and so on, eco-friendly and so on. So we have a lot of initiatives coming from many companies. They started designing these micro-mobility devices, which are very light mixture of materials of construction and design of these devices. So these show you the initiative of many, automobiles industries that they are already starting about thinking about micro mobility, and as you can see in that picture. So we have now around 125 micro mobility models announced by various stakeholders globally, 50% to go into production. So we have from General Motors, Ford, Chrysler, Audi, BMW, all of them are going to that direction by providing micro-mobility, the transportation system. The second is the trend, we talk about carpooling or car sharing or ride sharing. So this is also a trend to reduce the number of cars out of the road, and this means that to reduce fuel consumption, to reduce CO2 emission, to reduce parking problems and so on. So we have seen this initiative, of carpooling, like Uber and many other companies. They are adopting this, idea of carpooling or car sharing. So this is the second direction of future mobility. The third, we have been talking about connected vehicles or connected cars, is how to make the mobility more safer, and how to make the mobility, as I mentioned this morning, more affordable for everybody. Because when we talk about connected cars, the car will talk to each other, they will reduce the accident and the crash and so on. Autonomous vehicles, of course, we've been discussing this issue since this morning. This will increase the safety of the driving and of the mobility, and this is not the future. This is the present, and this is the past, because this idea of autonomous driving long time ago, you see, since 19. We've been thinking about autonomous driving so it's long time ago people have been thinking about this initiative of autonomous or driverless cars, self-driving vehicles and so on. So it's not the future, it's the present. It's there, it's not, as I said, it's not the future. The idea, as I told you, is to convince now the society to adopt such technology. The technology is there. A lot of automotive companies are developing such, cars, but the idea is, again, to convince this society to adopt this technology. Multimodal mobility and transportation modes, we have been discussing this, how to reduce the stress on the current mobility and transportation system by making people using other modes of transportation, either walking or biking or whatever. So it's a trend in terms of future mobility and transportation. So here in this picture we show you, if the distance is very short, we can use bike, then we change to micro mobility, then we take the train or the bus and so on. So we use multiple mode of transportation in order to reduce our travel time, in order to reduce the impact on the environment, in order to reduce the CO2 emission, and in order to reduce the fuel consumption. The trend number 6 is about electrification. Of course, we have to think about the environment, as I mentioned this morning, and the idea is to provide electrical car to save fuel consumption, and also but here again we talk about power electrical car, but in order to generate the electric cars, the electricity for the car, you have to use a fuel fossil, because to generate. So it's again, we are dependent on the oil and fuel fossil to generate the electricity which will power the car. So again, it's a trend where we think about the environment. The trend number 7 is to eliminate completely our dependency on the petrol by using alternative energy or fuel, for example, biogas and so on. So we hit, as we say, we hit two birds by one stone. So first of all, we don't use electricity, because we generate electricity from fuel. So we don't use the fuel, and it's carbon neutral, and we use solar panel, for example. Many car industries are using, are going to this direction, and they are developing what we call solar panel car, or biofuel car. So the other trend in terms of transportation, we talk about speed. In order to go as quick as possible between A and B, and we have this now. We talk about hyperloops, and here in UAE we're talking about the Hyperloop project, where you go from Abu Dhabi to Dubai in 12 minutes. So this is also a trend in terms of future mobility. So what I showed you is basically the different phases of future mobility and transportation. But the idea, each phase is focusing on something. So we focus on the security, we focus on the environment, we focus on the society. So the idea is to come up with the technology, with the device, with the car, where we think about all the dimensions. As I mentioned this morning, don't focus on the technology and forget the environment. Don't focus on the environment and forget the society. And so we have to think about all these dimensions to come up with an acceptable device which is carrying on the environment, which is accepted by the society, and so on. So the trend number 9 is basically the reduction of vehicle per mile travel. We talk about intelligent transportation system. Our colleagues this afternoon have been talking about using Internet of Things devices, collecting data, big data, location analytics. You know, we talk about analytics dashboard to come up with insight for decision maker or for end user. This is very interesting. But again, here my question is, what about the data security? What about because we talk about big data, what about data communication? It's huge. You cannot, transport it on real time on the network. It's a huge, you can store it, but how to analyze it, how to visualize it in real time? Because the car cannot wait even lapse of seconds to take decision. And if we talk about big data, the analytics of this big data cannot be done in real time. But the car has to take decision in real time. So we have the challenges out of each direction. So the direction number 10, we talk about emerging mode of transportation. We talk about taxi drones, like here in Dubai. But again, my question is about safety, about acceptance of the technology by the society, and so on. Maybe here in such example, we think about the technology, and we forget the society. So this technology has to be accepted and absorbed by the society. It will take time. So what I showed you is a lot of phases of the future mobility and transportation system. Of course, this future transportation system will affect the whole economy. And these are some entities which will be affected by the future mobility and transportation system. We talk about cars manufacturing, Mercedes, for example. They have to think about this. We talk about service repair shops. The people who repair cars, they have to also to think about the future, because we have a new types of cars, of devices. So the old model mechanician is not sustainable in the future. We talk about oil companies. If we are not using oil, what happened to the petrol station selling oil? Maybe they will change themselves by electrical charger for cars. We talk about insurance. If we are driving a self-driving car, so what happened to an insurance company? How they're going to deal with this? Is it safe? Is it not safe? The insurance will be less expensive, more expensive. So this, how it will affect the economy. The rental agency, we talk about Ubers. Before you rent a car, maybe for 1 day, for 1 week. Now we rent it for 1 hour, even for 30 minutes. We talk about medical practices, finances, how this car will be financed in the future. So all of these entities of or economy player will be affected by the future mobility and transportation system. The taxi operator, of course, everybody knows Uber and the problem between Uber and taxi drivers. The road construction company, and again we talk about the infrastructure. The fleet manager, the parking operators, our colleague who's been talking about the parking. The government, the regulations, the policies, all of these are affected by the future mobility and transportation. And what I showed you is basically different phases of such future mobility and transportation system. If we fail, what we cannot do? We go back to the old story, we go back to the horse, we go back to the camel. And always I finish my presentation by this quotation: we do not inherit the earth from our ancestors, we borrow it from our children, Native Americans. It's the Native Americans. So we have to think about the future generation. We have to prepare our future generation for the new transportation system. And again, capacity building and training is very, very important. And this is my role as a strategist. I worked on the strategic level, is how to prepare the generation in terms of capacity building and training, to prepare them for this new coming technology, either in the smart city level or the future transportation mode, because we have to train them, we have to prepare them. Thank you very much. So, any questions?